Welcome. It's only you and I, but we're going to learn today about the grammar that we use when we need to talk in the past. And we have two ways that we can create our sentence in the past. The first way is to use the past simple. And we know the past simple because you just say the subject, which could be I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then you add the verb with the ed. But there's another way that we could speak in the past, and that's called the present perfect. So the difference between the two is that one is a completed action that finished in the past, and the other one is still continuing in this moment. It happened in the past, but still continuing. So we're going to look at these two different types of ways about speaking in the past and making sure that we've got the grammar correct, that we know how to, give information about what is happening in our lives. Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. And we're in the review. So let's talk about the rules first. So you see, you've got the present perfect. The present perfect is when we use this when we're asking about experiences. And experiences means things that are exciting or maybe bad experience that's happening in your life, like traveling, having a baby, having a family, getting married, learning a new language. I mean, that's all an experience. It's something that's happened in your life, actions that are happening in your life. So we can say, have you ever, and then the action, the main action. So for example, have you ever lived overseas? Have you ever watched a soccer game at the stadium? Have you ever been married? Have you ever had dinner alone? Or have you ever, cooked a meal? So when we're asking about someone's experience, we're asking them if they've done it in the past. So maybe they did it last week, last year. It's not important when. We just want to know up until this moment in their life, up until now. So all my life before, have I done this action? So that's why we say, have you? Now you can change the subject, could be have we, have they, or if you're talking about she, a female, has she ever? Or he, has he ever? So you can change the subject, but in a general way, when we're speaking to people, we're really asking them, have you ever done this experience? And as I said, it could be about traveling, having a family, playing an instrument, playing a sports, watching a movie, singing, dancing. I can ask so many questions about someone's experience. What have they done in their life? And I say, have you ever? And then I put the verb with the ed, the main action. So have you ever played an instrument? Again, if we want to ask about someone else, it's a female, we say, has she or he ever? And then with the action. So as I said, it depends on your subject. We only say has when we're speaking about someone else, a male, singular, or a female, singular. And to answer, so if someone said to you, have you ever traveled to Europe? You would say, no, I've never. So you don't need to repeat the whole verb. You could just say, no, I've never. Or you could say, no, I've never been to Europe. Or if someone said, have you ever played an instrument? No, I've never played an instrument. If it's yes, then you just say, yes, I have. So have you ever traveled alone? Yes, I have. Have you ever learnt a language? Yes, I have. And again, we can change the subject depending on who we're asking. So if I'm asking about have they ever traveled before? Yes, they have. So just be careful who is the subject. If I'm asking someone, have you? Then you would reply, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. Okay, we know to make a negative, we add not. And we can ask not just about experiences like with, doing an instrument, playing a sport, speaking a language, going, traveling, but also if you've been to a place. So I want to know if you have gone to a place. Maybe like, for example, have you ever been to a church? Have you ever been to Italy? Have you ever been to the museum? Have you ever been to an English class? Have you ever been to the cinemas? Okay, so when it's about a place, like a location, a place where I go to entertain, see something, I say been. That's my action word. Have you ever been? And then I use the preposition to. And just be careful, some verbs can be irregular. So that means they don't have the ed. Remember this main verb here? So this main verb here, just be careful because the ed, maybe it is irregular. That means it has a different word. So for example, have you ever spoken? That comes from the verb speak and there's no ed. Have you ever spoken to a priest? Maybe. Dreamt is dream. So have you ever dreamt of flying? Have you ever dreamt of getting married? Seen is what we use when we say see. Have you ever seen the Eiffel Tower? Have you ever seen people fighting? Kept. Have you ever kept a secret? Have you ever kept something special from your grandmother? And been, which comes from the verb go, we say, have you ever been when I'm talking about a place? Okay, so just be careful. There are some irregular verbs, actions, and that means they don't have this ed. They just have their own rules. And you just got to remember which verbs are irregular. Which verbs are irregular in the present perfect. Okay, so this was some of the rules that we had for the present perfect. We know why we use it. Okay, it's different to the past simple. It's asking about an action, the present perfect, that happened in the past, but I want to know if you've done it now in your life. And this is how we make that sentence. Have you ever, and then the verb. Now, if you want to talk about time, you could say, I have studied for, and then you can say time. So I just wanted to show you that's how we talk about time, but that is with the past simple. So let's talk about the past simple first before, so this is the present perfect. You just have to remember how to make your sentence in the present perfect. And remember, you cannot add words in between. It must be have, subject, ever, and then verb. So just remember, this is the subject here. So I'll say plus subject. So you have to remember subject is I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Okay, and we have this ever. Have you ever? And that's how we ask a question. But remember, we can make a sentence. We can make a positive sentence by saying, I have studied Italian. So I can talk about an action that I did in the past, and it may mean that either I've just finished the action or maybe I'm continuing it. So I began in the past, I have studied Italian, And maybe I'm still doing it now. So how we do the first sentence is we have a subject. And then have, and then verb. But remember, if it's he, she, it, then it would be has. So that's how I create a positive sentence. This is how I create a question. This is how I answer to the question. And this is how I make a negative. So to make a negative, I would say, I have not done my homework. I have not spoken to Maria. I have not sent an email. So that's how I create a negative. This is how I create a question. Okay, so this is the question. And this is how I respond to the question. And just remember, if you want to ask about a place, you would use this way of speaking, as well as remember the irregular rules. So I've just added the notes to be a little bit easier to understand. The present perfect. We are asking about experiences that you've done in your life, like traveling, speaking a language, having a child. I mean, anything that can happen in life that's interesting. Playing an instrument, playing a sports, speaking to someone, doing some activity. Okay, I wanted to talk about the past simple and how that's different to the present simple. So this was the present perfect. And this is now the past simple. So the past simple is when we're asking about an action which is completed in the past. It's completed and finished. For example, you would start with your subject. And then I would just add the verb with the ed. So it's a lot more simple. So for example, I studied last night. I went to the gym last weekend. I saw my friend. I spoke to Maria last week. So it's a completed, finished action in the past. The past could mean yesterday, this morning, 2 days ago, on the weekend, last week, last month, last year, in the past. And all I do is I have a subject. Remember, I, you, he, she, it, we, they. And then I have my verb with the ed. Okay, and to make a negative, you would just add not. Sorry, to make a negative, you would need to add. So we said before that in the present perfect, to make a negative, you add not. But in the past simple, you say didn't. So we still have our subject, and then we say didn't, and then the verb is not with an ed. So just be careful. So it's, for example, it's like saying, I didn't do my homework last night. I didn't go out on the weekend. We didn't go for dinner. We didn't make dinner. She didn't come to the party last weekend. So I say didn't, and the action is not with an ed, like in the positive sentence. So just be careful. There's no ed, and we say didn't. And it's the same for all the subjects. I didn't, you didn't, he didn't, she didn't, it didn't, we didn't, they didn't, you all didn't. So same, didn't, verb. That's in the past simple. So it's about a completed, finished action in the past. And we can ask a question. So always remember that when you're learning the grammar of your verbs, that always know how to make a positive sentence, how to make a negative sentence, and how to make a question. Okay, there's 3 things that you need to do in all the type of tenses, if it's the past, the present, or the future. Positive sentence, negative sentence, and question. Now, to make a question, and hi, Henry. To make a question in the past simple, so we're asking someone about an action in their past that's finished. So you would say, did, subject, verb. So we start with the verb, did. So for example, did you see Maria on the weekend? Now you can see the verb, the action, the main action, there's no ED. Did you see Maria on the weekend? Did you buy anything at the markets? Did you go to the movies yesterday? Did you make dinner last night or today? Did you make lunch? Did you go to work today? Okay, so it's asking a question in a moment of time, the past, but it's finished. You're not doing it now. It's already finished. That's why it's called the past simple. It's the most simple way to make a sentence about an action, asking about what's happened before, now, this moment. Okay, so let's have a look at our some questions in our book. So you could see in number 1, Unit 10 review, have you ever, so they've done the first one for us, have you ever seen the Eiffel Tower? So remember, this is the present perfect. I'm asking someone if they've done this action up until now, because maybe they'll do it soon or next year. So it's not a finished action. That's why we say have. And remember, this is present perfect. So present perfect questions. Have you ever seen the Eiffel Tower? Seen is an irregular verb. So we could say, no, I haven't, but I'm going to Paris next year. Okay, so you could say, no, I haven't, not yet. So a lot of people, common native speakers, we like to use the word not yet, because that means not yet, but maybe someday in the future I will. So you could say, no, I haven't, not yet. Number 2, have you ever taught a subject? So we could see that irregular verb here. That comes from the verb teach. Have you ever taught a subject? No, I haven't. Or maybe, yes, I have. So we can also, don't forget the positive, yes, I have. You don't need to repeat the action in the question, in the response, I mean. Have you ever learnt the guitar? So this comes from the verb learn. It's irregular. No, I haven't. Or again, yes, I have. Have you ever ridden a motorbike? You could say, yes, I have. And when you say yes, then you go into the past simple to say what happened or more information about when you did it. So for example, yes, I have. I rode across the USA. Or yes, I have when I was a kid. Or yes, I have. My grandfather. I rode my grandfather's bike. Have you ever made a film? Yes, I have. Or maybe, no, I haven't. Okay, so whatever your response is, you would say yes or no first in the present perfect. And then to give more detail, usually you would go to the past simple. So let's have a look at the responses. If I said, have you ever been to the Eiffel Tower? I did have the answers here before. Okay, so that's the answers. Have you ever been to the Eiffel Tower? The answer would be from D. No, I haven't, but I'm going to Paris next year. Have you ever taught a subject? Yes, I have. I made one about my family for a college project. No, that's not that one. No, I haven't, but I've helped my younger brother with his homework. Have you ever learnt the guitar? No, I haven't, but I'd like to play it someday. Have you ever ridden a motorbike? Yes, I have. I rode across the US on a Harley Davidson last summer. Have you ever made a film? Yes, I have. I made one about my family for a college, for my college report. Okay, number 4. So we've got, have you ever seen a kangaroo? Sorry, for number 3, you can make up any question that you want. That's an example. Have you ever seen a kangaroo? That's asking about a life experience. No, I've never. So remember, when we've got the ever, your response, if it's negative, no, I've never. Or you'd say, yes, I have. Number 4, we have a conversation. Have you ever visited Rome? That's a present perfect. We know it's present perfect because it has the verb have. So whenever you have the verb have, that's connected to being perfect and present in this moment. Have you ever visited Rome? Yes, I have. I went there to study. What did you study? That's a past simple question. We know because it has the verb did. If you remember the rules before, past simple question, what did you study? Art. I also worked in a museum for 3 months. So that's past simple because it says subject, verb. So I also worked in a museum. When did you do that? Past simple, the did. When we talk about time in 2005, you could say in September, in 2024. So you could say the year or the month, or last year, last week, 3 years ago. Did you learn Italian when you were there? That's a past simple because I've got the did to say my question. Did you learn Italian when you were there? No, I didn't. Because I have spoken Italian all my life. That's present perfect because I can see the have, and it's not a finished action because I still speak Italian now. So that's why he said, no, I didn't, because I have spoken Italian all my life. Question. Yeah, that's it. So now you know how to speak in the present perfect, asking about someone's experience, how to make a positive sentence, subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, have. If it's he, she, it, you say has, and then your verb with the ed. You know how to make a negative, you add not. And to ask a question, you start with the verb, has or have, depending on your subject. We know, be careful, there's some irregular verb, they break the rules. And to respond, no, I've never, or yes, I have. So they're the rules for the present perfect. Everything that you need to know how to create a sentence, how to speak in the present perfect. These are all the rules. Now, the past simple is a completed action in the past. It's speaking about completed action. So we have the subject, remember, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then the action with the ed. I studied, I worked, I saw. So be careful, there are some irregular. And the negative, you add didn't. The verb does not have ed. So just be careful, we've got some irregular. And to ask a question, you start with did. So that's the past simple. These are all the rules to how to speak in the past simple. You say did. Did you work yesterday? Did you go out on the weekend? Did you do your homework? Did you cook dinner? Okay, so now we know how to speak in the present perfect correctly and how to speak in the past simple, to ask about past experiences. So then we looked at subjects at school. So if I said biology is a subject that we study about something, you could study something like 60% of the human body is water. That's from the subject biology. The Mekong River is in Southeast Asia and goes through 6 continents. That's talking about geography. Geography is a subject where you're talking about land, countries, the earth. Mary Shelley wrote the book Frankenstein. Literature is a subject where we talk about books. So we just call it literature. So this is a subject where you study writings from maybe the 12th century, 13th century, from writings from people from a long time ago, poems, you know, all different kinds of writing and books. Physics is a subject saying something like light travels at 299,000 million meters per second. So physics, when you study the universe. History, we know it's a subject where you study the past. Chemistry, you're studying molecules like hydrogen and oxygen makes water. At some examples here. So the independence of Colombia was on the 20th of July, 1910. So we could see this is a past simple because it's a finished, completed action. So it's not happening now. The independence of Colombia was. That comes from the verb to be. Brazil was discovered in April 22nd, 1500. Vietnam had 4,000 years of war against the invasion of China, France, and the USA. Okay, so these are just some important facts about history. To talk about books, we can say Gabriel Garcia Marquez was a famous Colombian novelist. Paulo Coelho was a famous Brazilian writer. He wrote, and then you can say the name of the book. Ho Chi Minh was a famous Vietnamese writer. He wrote, and you can say the book. So this is from the subject of literature. And a scientific discovery, we could say in 1923, the nature of galaxies were discovered by the Hubble telescope. So number 7, I study English every day for an hour. So that's the present simple because it's talking about your routine. I study English every day for an hour. Can you remember the past tense of the verb go? I always forget this word. We can practice English together by only speaking English. I need to learn the list of words before the exam. Okay, so now we can talk about subjects, we can talk about learning. We've got here some verbs: study, the ones that we just did: remember, forget, practice, learn. And to know, I just wanted to show you the difference between these two verbs. When you know, use this verb, it's because you know, you're talking about knowing someone, like you've met them before. Like, I know Maria, I know her from my class, or I know Julian, he is my friend. Or to know something, like I know this book because I read it. I know something. But to remember is when you're talking about information, rules, and laws. And just be careful when you have the American spelling, Z-E. So you could see memorize, realize. This is American English. To make it British and Australian, you need to put S-E. So anytime you see a word Z-E at the end, any word, if you see Z-E, automatically put S-E because that is the British Australian English. Okay, so here are some sentences for number 8. This week in my English lessons, we can say, we're going to use the present perfect. I've learnt about different learning habits. If you remember, we talked about good habits. Good habits means things that you do that are good. And we gave each other advice about good habits. What are good things we can do in our life? This week in my English lesson, I've learnt about all the present perfect. You remember the grammar for the present perfect? I've learnt how to use the past simple. This week in my English lessons, I've learnt English grammar in general. I've learnt some helpful advice to learn English better. You remember when we made a poster? What do you do to learn English well? You know, you watch movies with subtitles, you listen to sing to English songs. This week in my English lesson, I've learnt some new vocabulary. Okay, new words. We've been reading together stories to learn new vocabulary. So we could say vocab or vocabulary. Okay. And hi, Lucy. Everyone is online today. And this week I've learnt how to check and clarify that I have heard the correct information. You remember in our past lessons, we looked at how do we understand someone on the phone? We need to ask them, did you say? Is it, remember, if we need to tell them the letter, M for Mary, N for Nelly, or if somebody gives us their mobile number, we need to say it slowly. So we need to check that we heard the correct information. Maybe it's an email address, a phone number, your location, your address. Okay, number 9. Let's put some of these sentences in correct order. So is that A as in Amsterdam? Or we could say, is that B for Belgium? So when you didn't hear the correct letter, you could use this way of speaking. Is that B for Belgium? Is that M for Mary? Is that A for apple? You could say, was that 30 or 13? So usually a lot of the times it's very difficult to hear the difference between these two numbers. So you could say, was that 30 or 13? And if you need to repeat your number, you could say, is the number 0467? Remember, in the Australian mobile number, we divide the number like this. So is that 0467? So you say the first four numbers, break, pause, 564, pause, 725, and have a space when you write your number. So this is specifically for Australian mobile phones. This is how you write your mobile phone. Make sure you have the space exactly in this position. You could say, is there anything else that I can do, that I need to know, that you want? And have you sent the email? That's our present perfect. And number 10, we're going to look at imagining. We're going to write down the name of a famous person. So for example, Michael Jackson. If you didn't hear the start of the letter, you could say, is that M for Mary or N for Nelly? That's the very common way to ask about these two different letters, because sometimes they sound the same, N and M. And to ask about a mobile number, so if somebody said this number to you, you say, that is 0414, and then continue. His address is 8 / remember we looked at all these symbols? That's a / 123 Buxton Street, comma, North Adelaide, SA 5066. Okay, so that's all we had for doing the review. Now, because some people, I think Lucy came in a little late, I'll just put this one up again. Present perfect, when we ask about past experiences, this is all the rules. Start with the subject. Who is doing the action? I, you, he, she, it, we, they. And then you say have, and then the verb with the ed. For example, I have traveled to Europe. I have played the guitar. I have spoken to Maria. To make a negative, you add not. I have not spoken to Maria. I have not done my homework. Okay, and you add not in this position. I have not spoken to Maria. I have not watched that movie before. We have not seen that movie. Okay, so not to make a negative in the present perfect. To ask a question, start with the verb. Have you, has she, has he, ever? So question, you need to put the word ever in the present perfect, and then the verb with the ed. But just be careful, there are some irregular verbs. That means that they break the rules, they have their own rules. And to answer, when somebody asks us a question in the present perfect, we say, no, I've never, or yes, I have. And if you want to ask about time, you could use the word for. I have studied for 5 hours. That means that you're still doing this action. I have worked for 5 hours. That means I'm still working. And the past simple, remember, it's a completed action in the past. We have a subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they. And then you have the verb with the ed. So I studied last night. I went to the markets last weekend. I spoke to my friend. I finished my homework. I played soccer yesterday. Just be careful, they are irregular. So they do not have the ed. They have their own rules, like saw, went, spoke. Okay, these are just some common ones, but there's lots of irregular past verbs in the past simple. And to make a negative, you say didn't. I didn't, and remember there's no ed here, like in the positive sentence. I didn't speak to Maria. I didn't go to the markets on the weekend. I didn't play the piano. Or to ask a question, you start with did, and you have the subject and the verb. Did you do your homework? Did you make dinner? Did you find a book to read? Okay, so that's all that we had for the review. Again, we were looking at the difference between the present perfect and the past simple. These are actions which, yes, they both started in the past, but one of them is finished in the past and one of them is still now present, continuing. Okay, so that's all that we had for the review.